Today I'm going to be sharing 10 ideas that I believe would make both democracy and America as a whole better. After two odd elections in a row, we're seeing more political divide between the two major parties, and we're also seeing split opinions within each of those parties themselves. I think it's fair to say that many of our citizens are just fed up. We're sick of the current political system as is. So here are a few ideas that I believe would change the United States for the better.
We, the people of the United States, in order to...
So why is there no literacy/comprehension test for being president? I'm not talking about a small competency test that you take at the doctors like Donald Trump boasted about quite recently. I'm talking about a rigorous, topical test written by experts in fields that are related to leading the nation. A hard test. It doesn't really make sense that a real estate agent has to do more continued education to qualify and legally be an agent than the United States president has to do to become the president. And I know what some of you guys are saying. You're talking about not being free to vote. That's just nonsense. You can have a democracy and still have a testing system that narrows down the candidates who you're voting for. There's so many different ways, in fact, that this could be done, so it's still democratic. So the second suggestion that can make America/democracy better is just moving things online. COVID has helped make this abundantly clear. The government needs to improve their website functionalities. When it boils down to it, the government could cough up $100,000 or less to build extremely high-functioning automated sites that help make workflow a lot quicker. I'd do it for $20,000. Hit me up, government. Hit me up, Joe Biden. I'll make you an automated site. What's up? The cost for the government of building these sites would be quickly recuperated in the amount of expenses that they're saving. For-profit organizations have been shifting to automation, particularly on websites, because of saved costs. They've been doing this for years now. I know the government isn't a corporation, it's kind of a corporation. I know that the government isn't a full-blown corporation, but that doesn't mean that money doesn't exchange hands still. Ultimately, the government should be looking at saving costs where they can so we can spend it on the stuff that matters. That being said, automation throughout all of the government's platforms would be extremely beneficial to us. It would create a far better user experience. So this next idea, there's a lot of information on it already, thank you to Andrew Yang, but America should be considering now or in the near future a UBI, Universal Basic Income. In the next 12 years, 1 out of 3 American workers are at risk of losing their jobs to new technologies, and we are doing nothing about it as a country. We're not making any preparations at all. Unlike other previous waves of automation, this time jobs created through technology will be far fewer than the jobs replaced. To avoid this crisis that is going to happen, we're going to have to find a solution, and UBI seems like the only practical solution. A lot of people think that retraining the workforce is a practical solution. However, it's just not very viable. The jobs that are going to be lost are, service jobs and truck driving jobs and jobs that are very important, but jobs that generally don't require a secondary education, let alone a secondary education in coding. What exactly is a UBI? I kind of went on a rant already about it, but basically the government is paying you a small amount per month to be a citizen, just enough to cover your expenses. The whole point is they don't want to make everybody rich. They're not trying to dissuade competition, and competition won't be swayed. Andrew Yang's model, $1,000 a month, that's not enough that I'm going to be like, oh, I guess I'm done just living. I'll just take that money and I'll never work again. No, most people aren't going to do that. $1,000 a month isn't enough to do that. There are so many benefits that come from putting money directly into the hands of people. You're going to value mothers' work who choose to stay home to be with their kids, which increases education. You're going to reduce the amount of crimes as some of the petty thefts to support their family, and that sole reason alone won't be there. You're going to encourage people to want to stay out of jail, thereby also reducing the crime rates. Possibly most importantly, you're going to be benefiting local communities by putting money directly in their hands for them to go and spend their money in their towns, in their restaurants, in their stores. That $1,000, if it was otherwise owned by Amazon, certain parties may have you thinking that goes back into the economy, but in all reality, for the super rich, it doesn't go back into the economy. It goes back into other very large companies in the forms of investments and stocks. And ultimately, that is not being seen by any local communities unless you happen to be very involved in a community that has, a lot of S&P 500 companies, which hardly any of us do. The other biggest argument against this is where you find the money to do it. Because I've already ranted a little bit about this topic, I'm going to go ahead and refer you and leave a link to Andrew Yang on the Joe Rogan Experience, his podcast. He just does a great job explaining where the costs are, what his idea is, all of these benefits that I've been mentioning. He just goes over it in 20 minutes. If you want to learn more, that's definitely the place to do it. Alright, number 4. There should be government incentive to prisons for rehabilitation rates rather than capacity. According to the Bureau of Justice, an estimated 68% of released prisoners were arrested within 3 years. 79% of them were arrested again within 6 years, and 83% within 9 years. Rather than creating a culture of worthlessness and hopelessness around being incarcerated, we should treat it as a rehabilitation program. There are a few exceptions, but if we educated prisoners and equipped them with relevant skills, confidence, and possibly even tried to get them jobs, then we would decrease incarceration rates drastically, which is a pretty large problem within the U.S. today. I believe that we should be teaching philosophy in elementary schools. Mandatorily. Is that a word? We should make it mandatory for elementary schools to be teaching philosophy. There are a lot of core fields already. You have your English, your math, your science, your social studies. However, I believe philosophy does something that all of those can't. Philosophy has the potential to get children interested in knowledge itself. We need children thinking about thinking and finding it entertaining to question things and enjoying gaining knowledge. And the current school system just doesn't do it for them. The internet is such a beautiful thing. It's incredible. You have an infinite source of material at your thumb, an infinite wealth of knowledge. However, that's not what children are using this for, and that's not what it's really being taught to be used for. By having philosophy classes, you can get people interested in learning, and thus they can use the amazing, powerful tools they have at hand and research things that interest them a lot and gain knowledge. And one of America's poorest rated services that it gives to its citizens is the education system itself. We're very far down on the list, which is quite embarrassing considering how big of a deal we are to the rest of the world. Without using philosophy or making learning interesting or making kids think more critically, without instilling these things within our children, we will become a society unable to kick our generationally deteriorating attention spans. Number 6, we should have government or third-party unbiased sources required to overview any study giving a corporate claim, especially claims targeted and used in marketing towards the youth as well as the citizens as a whole. The problem is that right now any major corporation or government source can just go out, hire scientists, and tell them, I'm hiring you to create a test that will allow us to say this end result. And it's not very hard to do from the scientist's perspective. They then take that information, they say a study concluded that sentence, and then they sell it to your kids in the elementary school, and the elementary school is just like, oh, it's a study, how awesome. And then they just accept it because they're also being paid by the companies, and then they feed your kids garbage. Why, for instance, does Tyson do the research and studies that tell elementary schools that they should have Tyson products? Anybody who's studied statistics or lab science beyond primary school understands how flawed studies can be and how easily results can be manipulated. I bet I could complete a study that shows if I kiss a baby on the forehead, they will grow up to be better off. If I only kiss babies of the 2000 whose parents were born into wealth, and I don't kiss the babies who were born into poverty, then boom, I guarantee my results are perfect. In 18 years, I will effectively be able to claim that babies that I kiss will be better in life. After that, Dr. Oz will invite me on the show, and media's coverage will claim, oh man, touching kids makes kids better, and then there's going to be a spike of pedophilia all over the world, and it'll hurt the Catholic Church, and then after that. So this one I'm a little iffy about because it would require an entire restructuring of the whole process, which should happen, but is just very unrealistic. The idea of having multiple presidents, however, is that there shouldn't be one leader that represents little less than half of the country. People want their voice to be heard, and they want to feel represented within their government, and right now, with the two-party system, 2 presidents would help to do that. This idea, tax write-offs for individuals for doing volunteer service. I love this idea. It increases government labor without adding any costs, and it offers everyday Americans who are struggling to pay taxes when that bill comes around. It allows them to work. It's not just going to be, oh, you don't have the money? Let's call the IRS. You're going to get in serious trouble and pay a huge fine. It's like, hey, citizen of mine, citizen of this country's, let's work together. We can make a program for you that'll help you pay off your debts, and we're good to go, baby. Then the last 2 points that I have, they're very similar, so I'll just go ahead and pop them both on the screen. Addressing climate change from a corporate perspective, which is very important because all of the media and all of the messaging that we hear as citizens are that it's our burden to bear, and in some ways it is, but realistically, climate change damage is hardly coming from the people. It's coming from corporations, it's coming from factory farms, it's coming from industrial areas. I'm not going to go any deeper into that because I don't want to come off conspiracy-minded in this video necessarily. The last point I have, I believe there should be government incentives for solar farms. Not only would you be creating jobs by encouraging very, very rich investors and companies to build solar farms, but you would also be helping out the environment. And you'd be creating a form of a way to create energy that's not constantly taking new resources and new resources. I mean, there's an overpopulation problem on the world right now. If we don't start considering how much we're consuming of natural resources, then eventually we're going to hit a breaking point. We got to be encouraging solar farms. We have to try to get LA entirely on solar. You know, we got to try to figure it out so that we're not dependent on those resources. You know, you guys may have totally different opinions. If you do, then go ahead and comment them. I'm not so hard-headed that I'm not open to discussing any of these topics. And if you feel like you have a qualm or a problem with anything that I've said, I'm not going to be offended by that. I'm open to dialogue and would love to learn what you guys may know or what your opinions may be. Anyways, make sure to go ahead and give a like and subscribe. Hit the little notification bell. If you do, I will send you a replica of a Liberty Bell. You just have to pay for shipping.